I know. I swear to God, I was just going to say that'll be the first time in a long time that I remember.
Ooh.
I know. Look at me, even without sleep. I'm just kidding. We were just talking about something really quick that we'll just use as our little pointed thing for today. When you, Jeanette just came in and doesn't even matter. The outcome of the conversation was that I took away, actually, that Dale said, is she had a little pain in an area, doesn't even matter. And we said, sometimes, even though we espouse no pain, no gain, we absolutely espouse no pain, no gain in the actual lesson, in the actual doing of the video. But sometimes there is a little pain in between lessons or in between group sessions, or because sometimes change within the body, even if the brain recognizes it as profitable, it's such a big distinct change to what you're used to doing and where you're used to your skeleton being, that the muscles and the tendons and the ligaments sometimes need a moment to reorganize. And I will even take it so far as to say that the ribs under here that rarely get moved, they will today. That fascia, you know, that stuff that butchers cut off, that stuff can get almost webby because it hasn't moved in forever. So just to finish this thought, Dale said, so if you do experience pain, but he put on a good caveat. He said, if you do experience pain, it's okay unless it lasts sort of too long. So that's a good barometer. I know for me, for my hip, if I do a lesson and I notice pain later on in the day, a little bit in my hip, if I go to bed and wake up the next morning, it's almost always gone. The rest took care of it. If it didn't, if it's still sore in the morning, then I know I went way too hard. It's a good barometer to gauge. Or your practitioner went too far with you, because we're human, we're not perfect. So always let us know that. But that is a good barometer. And I would also say maybe even a step further that there's different kinds of pain. If you have shooting, burning, yeah, that's a different story. If you have like, oh, my neck is a little snug or something, so there are levels of pain. So just be aware of that. Yeah, Dale was going to say something.
Yeah, just like the last thing.
I love when Dale sticks his head in these videos.
So
just have this muppet.
All the and probably we've been exposed to like the gym idea of going to the gym and working out pretty hard, and it does seem appealing to our part of our brain that wants to go hard, and sometimes that does work. Going to the gym and working out hard or whatever, and but that kind of habit exists 100%. And then when we start doing this work, we're doing it really soft and gentle, which is quite a massive difference from any gym activity. Any sit-up, any push-up, any lifting weights of any sort. It's sort of quite different, and it's on the other side of the spectrum, I would say. So one strategy that I've, especially if you come in feeling sore or something's a little bit sore, yeah, it might be saying that you've done it a little bit too hard last time, and to do it a little bit less. And then so one thing to consider at the beginning of these lessons is you can start off doing the first movement just in your imagination, because then it really pushes you into that other spectrum. It's the opposite of go hard. When you start off in your imagination, you're really starting off in almost the gentlest way that you possibly can. And I wasn't really huge on imagination work before this training.
There's got to be people in the world that are, but I haven't met one.
Yeah, but I've been noticing lately that I've been doing the lessons, a lot of these lessons, I've been totally just doing them in my imagination and getting as much out of them as if I physically have done them. So just know that you can, so if you are, and it is probably the key feature, like for sure, it's nice to do these lessons and be able to physically do them or whatever. But the big thing that we're really focusing on is this is a brain exercise. And keeping that thing active. Imagination is like probably the top-notch exercise that you could do to improve your brain. So so consider that as something if
I
it's
think
not
that's a
something.
great, so remember that, you guys, the first movement of every variation throughout the lesson, you could do it totally in your imagination. And remember on Tuesday, that we were doing one variation. I don't remember what it was, but I did it to show it to you, to show it to everybody. And then I said to myself, now I'm going to do it in my imagination. And long story short, say it was a backward thing, because I think it was two directions. It was backward, neutral, forward, neutral.
Yeah.
And I did it, and it took me 3 seconds to show you. And then I said, and now I'm going to do it in my imagination. And I literally was like here, and people after about, because I had to get the feet ready. I had to be like, what are my hips doing? Oh, wait, my pelvis, I have to look. And it took me about 10 seconds to do the back because there's so many parts. And I remember somebody said in the room, wow, that took you way longer in your imagination than it did in movement. And I said, well, it was way harder. Because I was like, oh, wait, my head. Oh, yeah, start my clavicles. Okay, now everybody was rounding, soft pinch, roll the shoulder. Like I had
It's a complex thing.
The setting it up.
The setting it up
setting
and
it
then
up.
noticing it as you did. Oh, did my shoulders stop participating? Oh, I got to bring them in. There's a lot to do. So it's actually, I agree what you said. When you do the first try of every variation in your imagination, what it will do will bring you, like he said, it will take you immediately out of that push mode. Because if you got to get real insular or inside, it will change how you do the next few reps, for lack of a better word, because you didn't go hard. Marnie, you and I used to talk about this all the time when we first started doing this. Our instinct was to do it the best we could the first
The
time.
biggest, yeah.
The biggest, and like, yeah,
Push really hard.
best was big for us. So we would go like this, and Marnie all the time would be like, God, and I'd say, well, we need to build to it.
Yes.
And so starting with the first one of every variation as imagination is not a terrible idea, because it puts you in a totally different mindset. Okay. I think
And just to that this isn't just us suggesting this too. Like every Olympic athlete does stuff in their imagination. So if high performing people,
yeah, high performers have really accepted this.
the Tom Brady's of the world, and then when they're 43 and they're playing football still, he's doing a ton of stuff in imagination.
I remember
what I
he
mean?
said that he'd
Yeah.
be dead if he didn't, because someone would just, he wasn't allowed actually to practice every practice
Tom
because
Brady's
he's
like
got
that.
too much insurance on it.
Yeah.
He said if his own team hurt him in practice,
They would lose.
they
the
would
game
lose
or-
the game. Yeah, lose the season. So he was only allowed to like literally show up to the group practices once or twice a week. And people were like, well, that's got to be very difficult. And doesn't that, make you less of it? He's like, oh no, I do a whole bunch of my own stuff and then a whole bunch of imagination work
Yeah.
with the team in mind. If I see them coming, anyway, it is,
Yeah.
But I do like the idea, just to reiterate, that the first variation, try to do it in your imagination, because if it does anything else, it'll just pull you back from doing it big right away. It's just a habit breaking thing. So that's why I thought I would reiterate what he said. Okay, very good. Feet flat on the floor, come to the front-ish of the chair, comfortably, knees and feet comfortably spread. I'm probably gonna have to back up at some point. You know what, ladies, let's just do it right now. All of us have to back up because we're gonna run into each other. This has to go away. Actually, you can just go right, no, it's just gonna get in the way visually. Because at some point, they're gonna need to see my feet. Ish, anyway. Okay. all I want you to do is feel like I'm in a 1980s aerobics video, the two of you here, the demonstrators behind me. That's totally what it feels like. Sorry. Feet knees comfortably spread. Take out any arm you want. I'm actually gonna use my right arm today. So use, yes, exactly, correct, Dawn. Now notice where I put my arm. And how I put my arm out. Rest, put it back down. Make any changes that if you put it up too high or you did that really high taut hand, make changes. Put it down and bring it up and make changes again. The wrist should bend. This is an actual contraction. That's a ton of effort. This is not effort. Think of it as like literally hanging. Yes, different than even if I turned back and it was different. Now, you're not actioning it down, but you're letting it drop. Put it back down.
Now, the goal here is not that we're gonna take our arm, we're doing this.
Yes.
The goal is to
The goal is to go ahead.
be comfortable.
Yeah, there it is. The goal is to be comfortable. Because you will then learn more from the movement. And put it down for a second. I brought this up with you yesterday. When you put your arm out, tight in any direction, tight, elbow straightened, wrist straightened, fingers up, every single joint is now under a contraction, is being pulled up. The musculature around the joints will not move as well because it's tight. Does that make sense, what I just said?
Yep.
Thank you. So then you want to do the flexibility movement and you're in the tightest position known to man. So it does not bode well. You want the musculature, the ligaments, the tendons that are around the joints to be free, not tight. And I mean that in every one. Okay, here we go. All you're going to do is actually put it down and I'll tell you. All you're going to do is watch me. You're going to turn the hand in so that the back of the hand goes inward into the body and back to neutral. Stop. Turn it out so the palm goes towards opening and come back. Do that 2 or 3 times. Do one in your imagination. Then physicalize it. Do that 2 more times and then notice what you're doing. When you do it, so if I ask you something after, you might have some information. Put your arm down and rest. Go ahead. So the first one in your imagination, arms down, legs. I know, look, right away. And begin. Arm goes up. Good little soldiers. And I'm going to add something. When you're done that, do it in your imagination with the opposite arm. And notice which one's easier. I just added, sorry, Jeanette, put it down. Do it again in your imagination with the opposite arm. I just added this.
And before you head to.
Before you head into physicalization, do it on both sides and see which one's easier. You'll actually get an easier, nicer, friendlier. And whenever you're ready, physicalize it, do it just twice on just the first arm. On just the first arm, the arm you're going to use. I love watching people say, what am I supposed to do? This is weird. Whenever you're done, be done.
I'm counting to myself.
Count. People were like, that was so cute. Everybody done? No, sorry, Jeanette. It's brilliant. Not the most complex instruction, But when we have to do things a certain way and not go on automatic pilot, if I had just said, twist your arm in and out, all of you would have been able to do it. You would have done like that.
Right, exactly.
But the second you had to do movement with attention and slow and imagine it first and do all this, it became an intricate thing. That's good. It's helpful for the brain to do intricate things, not just rote behavior. We all just did rote behavior. We all just, well, at some point we walked into traffic, but
I think it made it easier imagining it first.
very interesting. Did you hear what she just said?
To sit here and imagine to yourself going like this, and then like this,
Yeah,
and then the other arm too,
that was an interesting thing. That just occurred to me.
and then actually doing it. I think it made it interesting to
And
do.
easier, you said.
Yes. and-
Why do you think it made it easier?
I agree.
Do you agree as well? You know that you probably would have done it hard or hurt
Yes.
or easier, that you got more rotation, whatever. It made it
I
easier.
thought about it more.
Why do you think that is? Anyone can answer this. Why would it be easier to physicalize something you've already imagined?
Because you've already done it in your head.
Yes, and a little bit more specific, that's correct.
You know what parts of your body to use that will help it.
Oh, repeat that?
You know what parts of your body that will help it.
Yeah, I never even thought of that, but yes. You have you have more information when you go to do it. It's that simple. If you haven't done a movement before, or say in the last 24 hours, and you think about it before you do it, are you gonna do it better or worse? Better. Why? Because you have more information.
Yeah.
It's that simple. It is that simple. We are an information system. If you can gather the information without hurting yourself, i.e. Dawn right now will be gathering the information about what to do in order to make this movement easier, better, stronger, faster, whatever it is, by using the arm that does not have any issues. So he has more information when he goes to imagine it and do it with the other arm. Thank you, thank you. Make sense? Okay, so. And I just thought it was interesting. I just threw in the other arm. Did anybody have a distinct idea that one arm was gonna suck compared to the other arm?
Yeah.
Well, yes,
You could hardly do your left arm, she
Yeah.
said. Dawn?
when I imagined my left, for whatever reason, it seemed harder to imagine it with that one than with the other one.
So that's a very interesting piece of information that we should all mull over. Why would it be, she said the same thing. She said, I just knew it was gonna be way harder to do with my left. You were probably happy that you had chosen your right.
That's right.
Yeah,
It's
and
all about-
you- yeah, and you felt like you didn't have as much ability or information. Like you didn't even have as much information with this, with the affected arm. It was harder to imagine, right? That's what you said.
It seemed to be harder to imagine it.
So why, again, why would it be harder to imagine? Because he doesn't have as much information, the trails, the whatever it is, the information taker downer road is not as clear on that side for Dawn. So stretching it, working it, forcing it isn't gonna work because the road isn't as clear. And we gotta get the road clear. And that's what we're doing here. Dale's taking toys to the front. So now, I have another question. How many, what other body parts, when you actually physically did it, did anybody notice any other body parts participating, or was it all?
Yes, my up here, my
I
chest,
can't see you.
my chest,
Chest, thank you.
my whole chest, my whole bones, everything.
Your whole rib cage.
Yeah,
Okay, perfect. Dawn's head is going slightly. Just a little, not a ton, but yes, perfect. Anybody else notice anything?
my pelvis.
Jeanette's like, no. That's why it sucked so much. I just did this, which is exactly what I did for first. So now you guys can understand, I was Jeanette in the first couple months of my training, except the exercises were not this. They were like take leg, put leg under and put around it, but for an hour and a half. Rep until I'm done talking. She talked for 15 minutes and we'd still be doing reps, and my hip was like going to tear off because I just kept going. Even though she was talking, I could have just stopped totally and listened. I just keep going. Oh my God, this is killing me. Keep going. So that, yeah. So let's do it and see if we can bring in some other pieces of their body parts. So put the arm up. This is not necessary. In fact, everybody thinks this is shoulder height. Notice where it is.
Eyeballs.
Eye height. That is shoulder height, and I don't even go there. It doesn't matter. I want you to rotate. When you rotate your arm in, I want you to think of the arm that is up, ribs expanding and coming away from each other, and the ribs on this side coming like an accordion together. Oh, but not the shoulder, Leanne. Drop the shoulder. This is not necessary. Drop the shoulder. And then bring it back. Not yet. Learn, feel what just happened. We're going to go back in again. So the hand's going to rotate in. These are going to expand, and these are going to get smaller. And bring it back. Not bad. This time I want you to push ever so slightly. Wrong word, push. Use the left foot, the opposite foot. You're going to push with the opposite foot. You're going to let the belly out and the ribs are going to expand. And maybe a piece of paper might come out from under your butt. Very nice. And bring it back. Does that make sense what I just said to everybody? Thank you. Softer hand, Dawn, softer hand. And drop. Put it down. Yes. I was the queen of this. She'd walk by and she'd hit my hand all day long. Because dancers do not, our hands are like, we don't do this. What the hell is this? I was like, what am I, a praying mantis now? She said, it's just not necessary. You're doing an arm movement. You don't need to have tight fingers. It will stop you from doing a cleaner arm movement. So picture this. Watch this, I guess is the word. How much of me is being, and you're going to miss part, you can see more with the white. Do you notice that my shoulder is not going up?
Your pelvis is moving.
My pelvis is moving. It is my pink pool noodle is responding. My foot is pushing. My clavicles are lifting. This is going. And I have, if I use, here's the hint. If I use all of this, I only have to use it at about 1%. So let me see if I explained that well. When I just use this, I have to use about 40%, 50% effort. When I use the whole thing, I go just as far and nothing gets tight. And I'm the laziest human on the planet. I'm doing it at like 1% because I've got more army. Does that make sense? If 800 people come to the war and they all use 1%, they're going to have 800%. If 5 people come to the war, no, even if they use 100%, they've only got 500%.
God.
So it's a whole body movement. And then when Dawn, as an example, maybe doesn't have all the pathways as clear, well, he has his pathways clear for this part, this part, this part, this part, this part. Let that do the work.
Yeah.
And the arm just comes along. Don't expect it to happen in the arm. The arm doesn't have the information right now. It's like asking something to be black when it's white. Okay, very good. We're going to go on. We're going to pick up the arm. And this time, don't pick it up until I'm done giving you instruction, because this is a lot of work. You're going to open the other way. So it's going to open. So the hand will end up going towards this-ish, the ceiling. Some people will only go to here. Some people will go all the way to here, but don't. Do it in your imagination first with the arm you're going to physicalize. Then just for poops and giggles, do it with the other arm. Then go back and physicalize it 2 times and see if you do it better than you probably would have done if you just went straight in. Because you maybe learned how to do it in your imagination. Go. Brilliant, Dawn. You're learning, you're gathering the information on how to move that arm. Brilliant. When was the last time you moved like that? Oh, your whole body went before, like it ignited the arm. I really felt it. Yeah. Yeah. We're having a whole second, like a whole life change. Oh, yeah. Oh, hi. They're busy, Dale.
Oh.
Count says hi.
Oh.
Count says hi. Do you see why it doesn't matter where the arm is? In fact, it's better if it's soft because you can get so much more. Anyway, okay. Whenever you're done, rest. While you're resting, while you're waiting for everybody to finish, notice if the arm that you've been using by chance happens to feel, let it go, happens to feel a little longer than the other arm. Happens to feel a little, like it's got a little aura. I'm just making stuff, I'm just telling you what I feel.
Feels more organized.
Feels more organized, feels more wherewithal.
Like I still feel awkward doing the other side because I've been doing this side.
Did you hear what she just said? She said it feels more organized, and then she said so then she rephrased it. She said, I feel like I'm doing it better on this side than I am on this side, even though, because she hasn't been doing it on this side.
Yeah.
I want to repeat that a lot of times when we do traditional exercise, like when you did exercise, when we fatigue, like really did it, that side, that arm was often, it's not usable for like a handful of hours because it was so fatigued. And it would even get,
Lactic acid buildup.
yeah, it would just became a noodle. And then when the next day you'd wake up and you'd be like, oh, mother of God, I can't even open my arm.
Yeah.
Why would we do that? We're trying to exercise to make our movement better. I often say to people, why are you exercising? And they'll say, well, because I wanted this, I wanted that. And they have these extravagant answers. And I'm like, you're 55 years of age. You don't like, you're not going to hay bale. Like, why are you exercising? And they're like, well, I want to move really well till I'm older. And I'm like, well, then moving well, you should be working on moving well, not killing yourself. Okay, anyway, what body parts did anybody notice participating in the opening of the hand? If any. We thought we did this. I'm totally exaggerating. I'm going to do it 500 times more than I need to. This is what I need to do. But we did this, we pushed the ribs out, these all split up, blah, 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 head tilted, whole spine moved. What happened when we did that? Anything? And if not, that's perfectly fine. So this was one way. Everybody get from that angle what I'm doing? This
Yeah.
was one way.
Yes, and you know when you did,
This is another way. I'm going to make sure I'm in the navy so you can see me.
you're still using your chest muscles, but you're using the
The
opposite.
bones of your chest. Your bones of your chest are moving. Are the muscles moving? Yes, but it is the bones that move the muscles. Tomato, tomato.
Hipper.
The nervous system that moves the body.
Yes.
But if you think muscles, you will tighten, almost guaranteed. If you think of moving the bones through, in fact, I'm gonna do something a little different. You can do this in 8,000 different ways to Sunday. I want you to do the exact opposite. I still want you to push through that. So I'm doing my right hand. I still want you to push. I still want you to, I want you to turn your head. I want this kind of look to happen. So instead of being this way, you're going to go, so it's exactly the same. Watch me. This was the original movement. Now it's opening. So I want similar, but the ribs end up doing something else and the head ends up turning. Does that make sense? This is way bigger than it will ever need to be, but I'm exaggerating it so you can learn. So this is turned in, this is turned out. Do you see that I'm opening? I'm going to kind of like 215. So turned in, still pushing with this foot, the opposite foot, turned in, and then pushing, but doing something else with the spine and opening and back, pushing and curving and come back, pushing and opening and come back. I'm gonna rest because I've been doing it the size of a dinosaur. So this is what it looks like small. If you were to ask me to do this first time this morning, show me Leanne, turn your arm in and turn your arm out, you would absolutely have seen me do this. I would not any longer will I do this. At the speed of light and without moving anything else. It is a whole body movement. Does that make sense? It's hard.
Yes.
Now I'm going to tell a quick story that will add to this. So relax in your chair. There are parts of our body that are more complex than other parts of our body. There are, so that means the action that they do takes more brain power. Does that make sense? There are parts of our brain that are more complex than other parts. Did you know that? The brain is not created equal. Now, don't get me wrong. There isn't like a chin part of the brain, like, you know, but just for so we can wrap our brain around it. Think of it that way. Think of it as there are parts of the brain that do certain movements that run certain areas. Because it kind of is like that, but it's not quite that basic. The eyes vision is incredibly complex. It's way, way, way harder to see than it is to move a knee. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. The tongue is another one. The tongue, by the way, is ginormous. It goes all the way down to about here, just above our clavicles. Every single sound. So just making the sound ba. No, that's actually complex because that's ba and just ah. The tongue has to formate in about 10,000 different positions just for that. It's incredible. It's an absolute gobsmacking miracle that most of us talk because it's incredibly, it's like rhythmic gymnastics in the tongue all day long. The thumb is the other one. So we have what's called the opposable thumb, different than separates us from the rest of the world. We can grasp, etc. So that thumb takes a higher echelon part of the brain. And the last thing is a combination thing. It is the muscles of the that attach to the pelvis. That is the belly and the back. And people will often say, I said it. I was like, I get the eyes. Eye is very complex. I get the tongue now that I've learned more about it. It's okay, I didn't realize the tongue did all that, but that's pretty cool. I get the thumb. It's unique and it's different. But why the muscles of the belly and the back? And basically what I was told was that watch a baby move. Every movement comes from the pelvis starts it. The pelvis is, if it doesn't start it, it's readily involved. You would never in a million years see 3 children sitting here, toddlers, and ask them to do this, and none of them ever would have done this.
No. That's funny.
We laugh at how weird it is that we're getting the whole body to do this. We're like, it's kind of weird. No, this is weird. This is non-human natural behavior. That is a taught thing to do. If you go to different countries where they don't subscribe to this go hard, go big thing, tight rep, there's not that many places in the world, but if you do go to them, they're far healthier than we are, especially in terms of joint. So after I learned, well, the day I learned about those 4 things, the person that was teaching us is a brain scientist. Her name's Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, and she had a stroke at 37. And anyway, it doesn't matter, but she ran a stroke clinic. So when she had a stroke, they put her in her stroke clinic, and her mom removed her from her stroke clinic, her own stroke clinic at Harvard, because it was wrong. She knew it was wrong. It was too hard. It was wrong. Anyway, so she's a world-renowned, she's the #1 TED Talk in the world. She's one of the leading brain scientists in the world. And she said, when I walked in today, into the room to talk to you guys, I saw a small person sitting on a stool from the back. So she saw, I can't use the chair because I need it. She said, I walked in the front door of this space and I saw a person from the back, and it was fairly obvious she was typing or doing something. Can you still hear me when I'm talking with my face at the back?
Yes.
She said, but I saw this, so look at me in there. She said, I saw this, and it was very subtle, but I saw it. Can you see what I'm doing? Is it reading?
Yeah, well, and it's funny because it just makes it, look like you're.
Just moving
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
So did the person need to push through their foot and roll their pelvis to the left in order to reach the shift key with their finger?
No.
Probably not. This keyboard's quite small. But this person does not move even her fingers without the pelvis. Now, I just told you 5 minutes or 10 minutes ago that if you asked me to do this exercise, I absolutely would not, I would have done this. I would have done all the different variations to this exercise with my whole body.
Yeah.
And that was a 100% shift, 100% shift from what I was. I would never have done that. So when this speaker saw this person typing, she said out loud, she said, I said it out loud to myself. You guys were all busy buttling around. Nobody heard me. She said, whoever that is, it's going to be one of the smartest people I've ever met. And we were like, why? And she said, because remember, when the upper echelon parts of the brain are working more often during the day, that person will become, unfortunately, so stay with me for a second. If I go head to head with my son right now, in terms of, like literally in terms of doing stuff in the day, he has a less complex brain than I do. His neural pathways are not as complex as mine. He is. So say he's here and I'm here. If we do the same amount of work today, the same amount of everything, I will go faster and achieve more. Does that make sense? Because I'm starting with a better thing, a more complex thing, and a more complex thing does better with the same amount than a less complex thing. Does that make sense? It's exponential. So if the 4 things that use a more complex brain, vision, tongue, thumb, and pelvis, if that person is doing this all day long, if she's doing it just while she's typing, you can imagine if she reaches for something, she's doing it. She is using a more complex parts of the brain more often throughout the day. So that's why she said she will be a very, very, very smart person. Because she's using it obviously all the time, even unconsciously. If you would have asked her, did you know you were doing this? She would have said, are you any fine? But she's just doing it. The penny is dropped, just like it's dropped here for me. I haven't gotten it to the fingers yet, but I will. But, and of course, the person, of course, was an odd. Of course.
But of course.
We really needed it to be an odd, and not really needed her brain stroked that day, let me tell you. But of course it was. So when I say to you, spend half an hour, 40 minutes, whatever it is, once a day, consciously repatterning, because we're so patterned to do it rigid, we almost have to repattern it. It will take a conscious decision to make change. That's what a lot of people say to me. If you had to explain your clinic in one couple sentences, what would you say? What's different from your therapy to the other? I say, we take away bad patterns of movement by doing the privates, hands-on, all those tight things, those days that you were like, oh my God, I can do that, it feels so good. We take away bad patterns of movement and replace them with good patterns of movement. And this is a perfect example. This is a bad pattern of movement. This is a good pattern of movement, in my opinion. And every single person generally that tries it does, yeah, it is easier if I do that. However, am I going to think that? You don't have, the more you do this work, the more it just penny drops. I don't think, if I reach for something now, I don't go, oh my God, I must push through my left foot. But it's now the pattern of movement my brain does. Does that make sense? In the middle of the night, when I'm asleep and I'm getting something for Callum, and I'm lying on my back and I have to go up there, I don't like, okay, push my foot into standing, rotate. I don't do that because I'm busy holding him or whatever. It's innate now. So, but how you get there is not by pushing and practicing and practicing and practicing. That actually grooves it in incorrectly. You do it by giving the pennies, giving the information, and then going out in the world and having the backstage brain play with it. We're going to do a couple more movements. Does that make sense? Does that story help? I hope it does.
Well, and it does, I think practicing it. I don't think you need to go home and spend 2 hours doing it.
For 2 minutes, putting it
Yeah.
into something. Thank you. She's 100% right. If you just did these lessons and never thought about it again, will it help? Yes. Will it possibly take a little longer to replace the bad movements of pattern? Yes, because there's just not the same amount, not even close to the same amount. That's why we say to people come and they do new lessons with us and they go, can I go home and practice this? And I say no, and they're like, well, why not? Like, that's so stupid. And I'm like, because you're not going to practice it this way. You can't even move your ribs yet. You're going to practice it this way, so you might as well just go throw this hour away and go, and it's a waste of your time. If you don't know how to do it, you can't practice it in that way. However, what Helen said, if every couple times in the day, you're standing at the kitchen sink and you're going to turn a knob or open a lever or whatever, if you stop for a second and go, First off, is there an easier way for me to put my arm up on that knob? Or am I gonna do some big tight reach thing, which we all do? And then, oh, look at that. If I actually did that, I'm gonna exaggerate it so you can see it. If I'm turning the knob this way, if I did that, that was really easy. Gosh, I turned it on too full because I don't even need it that far. That's what you'll find. When the whole body does it, it'll become bigger. And then let it go and say that was cool. I learned that. And then go ahead and finish making what you were making. And then later on in the day, when you go to sit, when you go to round, pick something up, something different, and you round, that's how you sort of glue it. If you only do the lessons, it will improve. I don't think Callum in his day goes, I'd really like to practice that move that Dad did with me. And it still works, but I think it would help. Okay, so now I'm going to do a different movement. Everybody close their eyes.
Oh, no, okay.
Just for a second. Okay. Open. So because we are a complex human being, and it's not always that type of movement we need to do to open, we can actually do the opposite. So in order to close your eyes, okay?
Oh, no.
Sorry. Okay. Open. So the last time I said to open and do this, correct? Remember I said, push through, push the belly out, open the hand and turn this direction. You can do it 8,000 different ways to Sunday. Another way to open is to push through the same foot that you're opening,
Yeah.
roll to the other side, and that will happen. I'm exaggerating it to show you. Does that, you'll end up on the opposite hip. The hip that will be lifted will be the hand that you're using.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except that the elbow bend. Yes. Do you see how this can do more when the elbow is soft? This was a perfect example. So she was starting to lean, leaning tower Pisa. The reason she started to lean, in my opinion, is these ribs couldn't get closer together because this elbow was too taut. If the elbow is straight, it's much harder for these ribs because they're the ones that are making it. They're the ribs that are connected to the arm. If that, see how it drops the whole thing. Yes, Dawn, but don't turn. Don't turn the body, try to stay at the front because the turn actually makes it less, you can still stay straight in the spine if you turn. Does that make sense? If I turn, my spine is still straight. I want to move some, so sometimes we restrict movements and say don't turn the body because if you turn, you don't have to round and very good. Now, this is complex. You can also, there's lifts, there's a million different, I'm doing it so you can see it. You can do it in all directions. You can just play. Because of course, not everything's going to be right in front of you in your entire life. We're just using the same. But just throughout your day, notice how often you tighten when you go to do something, especially in reaching. Notice how often, yes, Marnie, you go farther when you soften. If Marnie stepped up there and did this, she would just only be able to do this. But the second you do this, you actually go farther. I remember that was a big aha moment for me. And what she just said is one day I was like, well, if I move my pelvis 3 inches forward, then my arm is going to go 3 inches farther.
Yeah.
Why would I sit on my pelvis and not move it? It's just math, people. It's not math, 'cause I'm not very good at math. And I get this, but do you know what I mean? In fact, here's a perfect example. I did a minute reel. It's called a reel. It's on social media and you put, it's like a tip or trick. And it's a minute long. I'm getting a little dry. So the tip or trick was, so you have to show the bad one first, so they have something to compare. And that there's, well, anyway, it doesn't matter. I didn't talk it, I showed it. I might do a voiceover on it, I'm not sure. So basically what I said was, I said, I did this. I said, stretch, down, stretch, down. And then I said, first exercise, first variation. And I took the thing here and then I did this. Actually, I did it with this hand so you can see it.
Move your,
Farther.
yeah.
Then I went. And then it went even farther
Yeah.
because I'm actually taking my body in that direction. And then I brought it back. Then I did it the other way. Tilted it without taking, I actually had to hold my shoulder down because I'm so used to doing this now. Then I held my shoulder down and then I went. And I said, watch this. And I was like, and then further. And then I said, watch this. And I pushed through the foot, pushed through, like I had to show everything. And then I went back to the original movement and I went. I went a full, probably 10 inches farther. The first movement was this. I barely peeked my fingers. By just doing a couple of these, when I go back to this, it's sort of like a trick. It tells the body, hey, come along, because you just finished doing a whole bunch of come alongs. So then
Exactly.
this. Well, that's way farther. And it's also easier because I'm not tightening. If I tighten and pull, that hurts. Does that make sense? Bring the body along. Not only is it profitable in terms of distance and in terms of ease, but it will also weirdly make you smarter and bring in more neural pathways because you're actually using the muscles that are integrated into the brain in a complex part of the brain more often during the day. Most people don't care about the brain part. They just want to be able to reach. But does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
Notice how I get up even, instead of like, this is what I would have done before. Which is fine. But, you know, if I would have done not have strength in my arms, I would not be able to do this. Now I just roll. And I use my weights in space to get me up. And it doesn't take any energy. Okay. One more thing. Let's try one more thing. So at home, feel free when you watch this lesson to do a couple of the first ones that we did. And then feel free. So let's do this one. Come to the front of the chair, feet flat on the floor. Drop the arm in between the legs. And you're going to reach down and come back up once or twice and just see what you do. Take a moment and think. Is there anything you can do besides just doing your first habit?
You push your stomach out.
If you push your stomach out, you'll go farther because you're arching. You're going in that direction. If your head actually lowers a little bit, instead of being up like this, why do we do that? We're going there.
It just knows.
We're very, exactly.
Yeah,
what
when
I
it's-
I say that to people at the coach. I told you this last week and you all laughed, and I'll reiterate it because it was funny. People put their coat on in winter at the front door and they look the other way. They go, I just have to get. I'm like, what do you do? And then they can't find the
All
hole.
the time and it.
I know, and it hurts your shoulder. And then I'm like, also, you can't, if you can't find the hole, what part of your body looks at the hole? What, the eyes. If your eyes are over here, is that going to be helpful? And they're like, oh God, see, I have this shoulder problem. I'm like, no, yeah, you have a brain problem. You're looking the wrong direction. And when you look when you look the right direction, look at what your body did. So now you can not only see the hole, put your arm in it, but you can then use the whole body to pull it up, like so much easier. I gotta find a way to do a minute reel on that. Do you do this? But 90% of you guys did this when you looked down, not 90. Come on in, feel free. A bunch of you did this when I asked you to look down. Look down. Turn it in different directions. See what this entails. Do anything you want. Just move your body with the movement. Don't leave your arm / shoulder stuck in on its own. And this will be the last thing I say. Anat said right off the top, this muscularly is not built. It is literally not built. The tendons are tendons and ligaments are too short. They are built, the shoulder and the tendons and the ligaments and the shoulders and the elbow and the wrist and all the joints are meant to like paint, type. They're not meant to do this. They're just not. They're not meant to lift a heavy see, I can't even do it. To lift a heavy casserole dish off a top shelf. They're literally not built to do it. So why people are saying, why are we getting all these replacements? Part of the reason is because we've learned to isolate and then we just last longer. We didn't last as long. We died at 30 and 40 before it had time to wear out. But if you use it and you use the whole body, just like Dawn, if you imagine your arm doing it with the whole body, you'll have more of an army coming into the movement. And you'll go farther. And it'll be easier because you're not so damn tight. Very nice. That's it. That's all, ladies and germs. Have a great weekend.
You do.
You too.
Work on a BB.
Next week.
See you next week, Marna. You're in on Monday?
Pardon?
You're in on Monday, right? Or are you in this week?
I believe so.
If you're not in this week, you're in next.
Yeah, bye. Have a good weekend.
Have a great weekend, guys.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. I just started